Seminal horror writer H.P. Lovecraft, born 1890, died 1937, is far more famous now than he was in his lifetime. He was a strange and reclusive man who spent most of his life in poverty, despite being born to a respectable East Coast family. His stories share a mythos in which humanity interacts with a pantheon of monstrous ancient deities, the most fearsome of which is the primordial sea demon Cthulhu. The other elder gods include Yog-Sothoth, Nyarlathotep, and the ever-popular Shub-Niggurath. All of those creatures are fictional, but beginning in 2006, a number of websites alleged that Lovecraft once hunted a real-life monster, a flying cryptid, known as the Awful. The Awful resembled a cross between a griffin and a pterosaur. Now, one does not expect to see such things in Vermont, or anywhere else for that matter, but especially not in this lovely part of the world. Yet we are told that in the early 1920s, this creature was seen in and around the quaint town of Richford in northern Vermont near the Canadian border. It is said that, around dusk one evening, 3 sawmill workers in Richford spotted a very large griffin-like creature with grayish wings that each spanned 10 feet. The beast was perched atop the 4-story Boatwright building at the corner of Main and River Streets. Today, this intersection seems surprisingly unchanged. Supposedly, one of the witnesses had a heart attack upon seeing the creature. Like a pterosaur, it was featherless. Unlike a pterosaur, it possessed a serpentine tail as long as its wingspan. In later weeks, locals repeatedly spotted the flying whatsit. On one occasion, it clutched an animal in its claws. At least, so we're told by many online sources. All of these websites reference an article in the County Courier, a respectable and venerable Vermont newspaper, published on October the 19th, 2006. The author of the piece is H.P. Albarelli, a name I respect. He is a serious researcher who has done important work. He's best known for this impressive book about Frank Olson, whose murder became a major scandal in the 1970s when the truth began to seep out. Albarelli's work inspired the Earl Morris documentary Wormwood. Aside from this one County Courier article, Albarelli has never shown any interest in either horror literature or Forteana. The County Courier piece indicates that the initial awful flap died down within 3 years. We are told that in 1925, Lovecraft was visiting friends in southern Vermont. He caught wind of this tale. Impulsively, he traveled up north to interview eyewitnesses. They all made a good impression on him. Despite going to all of this effort and expense, Lovecraft published nothing about the Awful. However, we are told that the monster reports inspired aspects of his fiction. The specific details didn't really matter to Lovecraft. What he took away from the experience was a general sense of the unearthly. Lovecraft died in 1937, yet the Awful lives on, supposedly. According to Albarelli's article, there are still occasional sightings. Biologically, of course, such a creature is impossible, but mere impossibility won't stop a Fortean from doing research. Unfortunately, my research has found problems. I have looked and I have looked, but so far I have found no contemporary reference to the original sightings in any Vermont newspaper whose archives have been placed online. Maybe you will have better luck. I've seen no reference to this creature in any book about cryptids published before 2006. How could Lovecraft have heard about this creature if nobody published anything about it? Lovecraft biographies by W. Scott Poole and L. Sprague de Camp do not mention this episode. Neither does S.T. Choshi's authoritative 2001 Lovecraft biography, A Dreamer and a Visionary. This book states that Lovecraft made his first visit to Vermont not in 1925, but 1927. In that year, a great flood hit the entire state. This contradiction shows up in Albarelli's own article. His first sentence says that Lovecraft made a secret trip to Vermont in 1925. Later, Albarelli quotes a Lovecraft letter which states that he visited for the first time in 1927. He returned for a longer spell in 1928. He stayed with his friend, Vrest Orton. This trip inspired the short story, The Whisperer in Darkness. On that occasion, we are told, he climbed Governor's Mountain near the southern border, and he visited poet Arthur Henry Goodenough, who lived near Battleporo, also in the south. Richford is some 145 miles north of that spot. The trip would not have been easy, especially if we suppose that he made this trip after the flood did its damage. Lovecraft had to watch every penny, and he had no one to stay with in the north. Would he really have made such a journey? I have my doubts. At the same time, I can't completely dismiss this tale. The County Courier is a respectable newspaper. Albarelli is a respectable writer. He has no motive to lie, Truth is, a respectable writer has no motive to discuss such a thing one way or the other, even if he can prove everything. I mean, you wouldn't expect William Shirer or Barbara Tuchman to write an article about the Loch Ness Monster, not even if they met him for drinks. Some topics are best left to Fortean rascals like yours truly, who are beyond all shame. Lovecraft fan Justin Woodman reminds us that Lovecraft was a skeptic when it came to real-world claims of the paranormal. When Woodman wrote to Albarelli requesting further documentation, Albarelli brushed him off without providing sources. Albarelli also said that he personally is not a big Lovecraft fan. Well, to be frank, neither am I. The man's life story is interesting, but his writing style is a little too eldritch for my taste. Still, H.P. Lovecraft is considered a major figure within his genre, and literary scholars have every right to ask for evidence. Right now, I don't see any.